learning and curiosity is something that's sort of been the base of where and how I've got to different places. I've never been afraid to jump, so if an opportunity has generally presented itself, generally I will say yes to it. I left Westpac. I still remember the day I left. I was in tears the whole day, and my boss is looking at me going, "Tracey, what are you doing?" He goes, "You made the decision." I'm like, "I know, but I'm just so sad." I stepped into an operations role when I went to KPMG. So that was the first time I probably started to touch technology in a real manner. As a leader, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be able to listen actively and know where to ask and probe the questions and how you support the right outcome.
A couple of years on from that, 2014, you left KPMG. Was there tears this time? Was it a bit like leaving?
Yes, there was.
You took the role of CIO, though, at the perfect time, December 2019. two months before COVID, you decided to move into another role, a global role.
We would have done it very differently if COVID hadn't been there. I do say to people, back yourself, say yes. There's nothing wrong to you learning on the job and starting to ask for help and develop that as you go.
Today, we're thrilled to welcome Tracey Evans, a future-focused CIO, whose career has left an indelible mark on industry giants such as KPMG, Seek, and most recently, Virtus Education. Tracey has also provided guidance and advisory capacities at prestigious organisations such as Deakin University, the Australian Animal Protection Society, and Advanta. With a breadth of experience across digital, professional services, and finance, Tracey will guide us through her career journey and explore her culture-first leadership philosophy. Great, so Tracey, thank you for joining me today.
Great to be here.
I'm fascinated to learn about your journey. From our research, I can see you've had a really interesting background and you've done lots of really interesting things. And I guess every good story starts with once upon a time. So I'm interested. Tell me a bit more, maybe about a young Tracey. Sort of where were you born, and what did your kind of early life look like for you?
So I was born in Melbourne. So grew up here, have lived here all my life.
Yeah.
Enjoy travelling. So for me, that's sort of one of my passions outside of work is travelling, which I really, really enjoy learning about other cultures. But have a base here. Have a twin brother, so I like to tell everyone I am the youngest by 7 minutes.
Yeah, the baby.
The baby. Brought up by a single mum, so she was pretty phenomenal and pretty amazing with what she did. School years, I loved school, had a great group of friends. Yeah. Fairly sociable, very much into art, graphics, all of those types of things. Love geography, but that, again, travel and culture. Yeah, all of those elements. So for me, those early years were great. Really close with my mum and my brother as well and my extended family. So, had a really, really happy childhood. Not a great sports person, so, attempted a few different sports, but never great at anything like that. So more artistic and, quite curious and, very eager to learn. So, by the time I got to high school, it was, what do I want to do and where do I want to go? Yep. And I sort of landed on I wanted to go and do town planning, which was, quite random and very different from anything that I was studying at school.
Was that a blend of geography and
art?
Yeah. Did you by any chance play the game Sims?
I did.
Yeah.
So, and again, enjoyed all of those types of elements. So, thought that would be really, really good. At that point, RMIT and Victoria University were the two universities in Melbourne that were offering that program. Yeah. So I got into Victoria Uni, which was out at Footscray. So it was, 2 hours to get there, 2 hours to get home and do all of that. Worked out sort of halfway through the first year that I didn't enjoy uni. I found it really, really challenging and different. So, I'd gone to a Catholic school that was quite small and I had a really secure group of friends into a massive environment that I really found hard and I wasn't really enjoying the content. So I made a decision that, I was going to defer my study and go out and look for a job full time and do a bit of work and see what I wanted to do next. So I sort of did a massive shift, which was a bit of a risky thing, but for me it was, I wanted to take a step back and just work out what I wanted to do.
Well, sounds like the right thing. As in, if you're not enjoying something, why keep chipping away for 3 years of your life for the sake of a certificate? That's interesting because when I was looking at your resume, your LinkedIn profile, I can see on there obviously Swinburne and business degree. So I'm assuming that kind of came later. So what work did you kind of go into at that point as you're kind of coming out from Vic Uni?
So I decided that I went for a couple of different roles, and they were more sort of admin junior positions, and I was offered a role as a bank teller at Westpac, which I loved. So very much customer service. So old school then. So this was early 90s. So very much having customers come in. Pension day was amazing. I got to know all the oldies who came in to claim their pension checks and, build really strong relationships. But just really enjoyed the work. I found that quite stimulating with regards to, again, for me, learning and curiosity is something that's sort of been the base of where and how I've got to different places. So, really enjoyed the environment that I was working in. Loved the interaction with people, found that really, really great. And, to your question, Anton, that's where I decided, I probably need to go and do a bit more study. So, again, learning for me, something that's relevant. I was enjoying what I was doing at the bank. So, and they had a program where they would part pay for my degree. So, from that perspective, I looked at a couple of different options, and again, very thoughtful about what I wanted to do because, wanted to make sure it fitted into everything else. So I did it part-time for 6 years, my Bachelor of Business, while I was still at the bank. So
that's hard graft, doing
part-time study. It was, but again, for me, that learning side of things, I majored in marketing and economics. Do not ask me why. Again, I just found both of those areas fascinating. Loved economics. I thought was awesome, and everyone looks at me going, what? So really enjoyed that. But again, it was the interaction, it was the learning. I did it at Swinburne, which is very much based on networking and group learning, and I get a lot out of that with regards to listening and learning from people around me. So I really enjoyed the environment. Again, built a really great group of friends. So it was a different uni experience for me as well, which was great, but something that, I really felt passionate about and was really keen to follow. So, it was great.
So that was still in person, like in the evenings or something?
Yeah, so I was doing 2 nights a week. So I'd finish work and then go straight into uni. So
It's interesting, though, through that experience working as a bank teller. I think there's no better experience than working with the general public.
Oh, absolutely, right.
Particularly in that situation, because I'd imagine you would have dealt with people in fairly stressed situations, potentially thinking they've got money they haven't got or needing money because they're quite desperate. So I think being probably quite young, experience-wise, age-wise at that point, that must have been quite, informative to shaping who you are.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly problem solving and, to your point, in some of those situations that can be a little bit more stressful, learning how to handle those. And I think just building a sense of empathy was really, really important. I think the other thing that's been really important to me and something that I've held true to throughout my career is just being authentic. So, what you get is generally who I am inside as well. So, I think that, creates an atmosphere that people feel quite comfortable. So, certainly built a lot of my learning. And again, I've been really lucky. I've had lots of great mentors throughout my career as well with regards to people helping shape and learn from and do all those things, which has been really, really great. And that started when I was in the banking space.
I was going to say, so that even when you were with Westpac?
I had some great managers that really looked after me, and I learned a lot from them.
Yeah, that's great. Look, again, it's also great to hear that an organisation like Westpac recognise they've got a bank teller in the business and we're prepared to co-fund and support you through that study as well.
Yeah.
That's not something you hear very often, and I think that's a real testament to them as a business.
Yeah.
As you were finishing up with that course, I saw that you did an MBA. Is that something that you did sort of sequentially? Did you follow straight from your degree, or was there a gap and you kind of returned?
No. So when I finished my degree when I was still at Westpac, I decided, like a lot of people in their 20s, that they wanted to do the backpacking journey to Europe.
Oh, yeah.
So I took 6 months off. So I was able to take a sabbatical from the bank. Again, really, really lucky, had really supportive manager who said, yeah, go do it. So I spent 6 months travelling because I was very deliberate that I wanted to do that. Came back from that and then had an opportunity through Westpac to take up a role in Sydney. While that was happening, was also KPMG reached out and was talking to me about a role with their organisation that was Melbourne-based. And for me, as I said, really close to my family, the Melbourne-based job attracted me. The fact it was with KPMG, so sort of trying another different industry. Yeah. So decided to move over. So I left Westpac. I still remember the day I left. I was in tears the whole day, and my boss is looking at me going, Tracey, what are you doing? He goes, you made the decision. I'm like, I know, but I'm just so sad. So, went to KPMG, very different environment. And again, for me, stepping into a different space, learning, but also still keen to learn and build my academic career. So that's sort of where I decided to do my MBA when I was at KPMG.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to go back a step there to Westpac. I often say to people, remember how it feels when you resign, because at some point someone's going to resign to you.
Yeah.
And it may give you a bit more empathy to understand it's not a nice experience to go through for most people.
No, it's always been really hard for me. I'm heavily invested generally when I step into an organisation, and it is a big decision when I decide that I'm moving.
Yeah, and you can see that from your resume, right?
In my tenure.
You hang around a bit. I won't say whether it's too long or too short, but so KPMG is interesting. So again, most people think of KPMG, I guess, as a consulting firm. Mm-hmm. But my understanding from reading through your resume was it wasn't a consulting role.
No.
It was an internal role. No.
So I stepped into an operations role when I went to KPMG. So, it was very much about organising all of the admin and the operational aspects for the middle market business. So, the group was probably about 100 people in size, about 6 or 7 partners. Again, learn a lot there. That was the first time I probably started to touch technology in a real manner. So, before that it had been bits and pieces, but, not really anything that was really full-on tech. So that was where I started to really engage with it.
Because that was so the initial role, if I read right, was like business transformation, but within the kind of IT environment. Yeah. So the question I was going to ask you is, was there a moment that you can remember in your career when you decided
Tech was it?
Tech was it. You said it better than I could.
So it was 19. I don't. This shows my how experienced I am, if you like. So 1999, when we were going through whether everything was going to shut down in the year 2000 or not. KPMG decided that we were going to re-platform our practice management system and move to the SAP world. Yeah. And like a lot of implementations that I'm sure a lot of people have been involved in, probably didn't anticipate how much work was involved in that implementation. It wasn't going fabulously well. And the program director was looking for some additional subject matter expertise across the business to come in and help sort of re-navigate the program, if you like. So I was asked to step into that program in a business analyst type role. Yeah. Exposed to sort of the SAP world and technology and program management and implementations. Again, coming back to me and the who I am, different environment, learning, curiosity. So, had all of those elements in the tech space, which I found quite interesting. Yeah. Had and still have a really good ability to interpret sort of technology talk and make it consumable for stakeholders and business people. Yeah. Had that customer service experience, enjoy solving problems, working with people. So it sort of all gelled from the point of view of that particular moment and stepping into that program. And sort of from there I navigated where I've got to today based on that sort of first step into that project.
Yeah, fantastic. It's amazing, isn't it, those decisions you make at that point in your career and the trajectory it can send you off on.
It's been another reflection point for me, I think, Anton, especially, over the last 8 months. I've always I've never been afraid to jump. So if an opportunity has generally presented itself, generally I will say yes to it.
Yeah.
And be willing to sort of navigate and work out what that looks and feels like when I get in it. I've never been afraid to learn and jump into something that I'm not fully appreciate. So, for me, this is just another example of, saying yes to something and then, having the ability to back myself and then work out how I'm going to navigate it once I got into it.
Yeah, great. But it's a great opportunity as well there where you've moved into that role and you've really played to your strengths, which is, people in your bank experience and probably your upbringing there as well. And you understand kind of what motivates people. You can read the room, I'm guessing, at that point. And you've got the business experience.
Yeah.
So again, it's an interesting move. You don't need to be an SAP expert to move into that kind of transformation role.
No.
There's other things that you can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where some people get hesitant about putting themselves forward. And also, there's a third condition there, which is really interesting, which is you were already in the business.
Yeah.
If you'd come as an external prospect, the chances of them taking the risk on you are probably significantly lower.
Absolutely right. You're a known commodity.
You've got your internal brand, and I think that's something that certainly I always advise young people going into business is think about your personal brand, not just on LinkedIn and Facebook. Think about your personal brand in terms of what people are going to say about you, because that's going to take you further.
Yeah.
And you've still got to deliver things, right? The personal brand is built on execution and accountability to whatever you own. But that's much more important when you're starting out your career, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's also something I've been thinking about in the modern world where we've got this ongoing battle around hybrid, right? And we've got a lot more people who want the flexibility and the ability to not have to be in the office, which I absolutely appreciate. To your point, Anton, the thing that I think for younger people starting their career and working out where they want to get to just be mindful of that learning and what you listen to and what you hear when you're in the office with some of those experts. You don't get that over VC and you don't get that when you're not in it. And that worries me a little bit with the hybrid working as to helping young people actually have some of that mentoring that isn't direct mentoring, but what you pick up when you're in the office. I think that's something we've got to be really mindful of as well.
100%, that vicarious learning is
right.
Is let's say the current generation. It's how we all developed. The other thing, and I saw some data on this, and it showed that I can't remember the exact percentage, but I'm going to say it's about 50% more likely to get promoted if you're present in the office than if you work remotely. Now, I'm not saying what's right or wrong there, by the way, but it's just the fact that if people know you, see you, bump into someone in the corridor and they say, hey, could you fix this problem for me? Yeah. That's where opportunity presents. Yeah. It's that out of sight, out of mind, unfortunately. And I think that probably in business we've got a long way to go. There's a lag. Actually, that's a better way to put it. There's a lag in leadership and ability to manage in a hybrid model to get the best from their team. Whether there's a demand for hybrid working, there is, of course there is.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that we've got the leadership capability to match the demand yet. Yeah. And I think there has to be some serious rethinking and upskilling if we're going to maximise the benefit of it. So going back to KPMG, so you've had some amazing roles there in the time you were with the business over the next 5 years or so. You're kind of business transformation manager. You've then moved into SAP application manager. So you're obviously pretty good at implementing SAP. And then you've ended up as senior manager for applications. Yeah. So I'm bored with SAP. I'm just going to take on the whole lot. How were you? I suppose you've said you've jumped at opportunities, but how were KPMG helping you to shape your career through that?
I think, it's a really good question. The fact to your opening comment around, I've tended to have long tenure. I think the fact that, you're able to build a personal brand. I had people that I'd worked with across the organisation that knew me very well from the point of view of I could have career conversations with them and really honest conversations. So even when I took on the SAP application manager role, I still remember having the conversation with the senior manager in the enterprise application space, and he said to me, Tracey, I'd really like you to apply for the job. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't have a technical background. Why? Why do you want me to apply for the job? And he said, because you've got the stakeholder piece, you can problem solve, you're able to prioritise, you can work well with people, and in a manager role, those skills are really, really important, and we're willing to provide you with support and guidance to help you with the technical elements. And I think at that point as well, I probably realised, and it's, something that, sometimes I'm really good at, and sometimes, it's something I've got to remind myself about, is, as a leader, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, and you don't have to have, the depth of technical knowledge that everyone else in the room has. You have to be able to listen actively and know where to ask and probe the questions and how you support the right outcome. So, for me, that was a really big learning point around, that difference between a doer and probably starting to move into management type roles.
Did that come naturally to you?
Took a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I fell over a couple of times with it. I had people who gave me really, really honest feedback around it, which was really, really helpful. So, for me, I have perfectionist tendencies, which I've got to manage really well as well, because that, plays out in some of that. And it's, how about you? It's how you empower people around you to actually deliver, and how you support them in that. So, So I still fall over sometimes, Anton.
Of course,
I'm not perfect.
Despite being a perfectionist. There's an irony there. But he also struck me as a very independent person.
Yeah.
And I think independent people by nature, and this resonates with me, you tend to want to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
And you want to fix things, and you want to have an opinion and be able to do stuff. So it's, again, the irony there that people with that nature tend to end up in leadership roles, but then have to learn to switch off that aspect.
Absolutely.
And lean on the team. So there is a transition. And you say, we're only human.
Absolutely.
We're going to slip up. I'm just interested, were you ever tempted to go into the consulting side of the business?
I was asked to.
Yeah.
At that particular point of time, I was really enjoying my role. I enjoyed working with the people around me.
Yeah.
I sort of made the call that I didn't want to do it at that point of time.
Yeah.
For me, that the team aspect and working with people that I can learn from is really, really important, and I was getting a lot of that in the environment that I was in.
Yeah.
So I actually said no to the offer at that point.
Yeah. There you go. Well, again, I think it's knowing who you are.
Yeah.
And what motivates you as well.
Yeah.
Because there is this temptation to say yes to everything, right? Because you want the experience and you want to push yourself, but there's certain times where that inner voice tells you this isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And I think until people have really experienced the workplace, they don't necessarily know what environment's going to suit them. And that's probably the first 5 years of your career that you're figuring out.
Yeah.
Some people don't realise it, but they actually thrive with structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people need ambiguity and freedom to go and make things happen, and you don't know until you've tested yourself.
No.
In 2011, I saw you move to a global role with KPMG. So that would have ticked your boxes in terms of travel and culture.
It certainly was one of the reasons I took the role.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Was that role based in Australia?
Yeah, so it was Melbourne based. I spent a lot of time on planes at that point of time as well. I had to build out a team as well. So the team was sort of geographically based across APAC. So I spent a lot of time travelling. So I didn't spend a lot of time in Melbourne, but yeah. Yeah.
So did that kind of take you into any places where you'd always been keen to go on the bucket list?
So for me, that role covered all of the Asia Pacific region for KPMG. So, I got to go to places like Taiwan, which I absolutely loved. It would never have been a place that I would have gone to. Yeah. Loved Taiwan. South Korea was another one, which was really, really fascinating. I still remember I was walking through the market and I was mobbed by these journalists this gentleman they were introducing me to in Korean was running for mayor, and they wanted foreign people to provide their backing for this person. And I don't even know who he is. You randomly selected me out of the crowd.
There you go.
So South Korea, again, really, really fascinating place. And, it's not until you get there that you understand the tension that still goes on between South Korea and North Korea. You walk into the train stations and there's gas masks because they're worried about getting, bombed. And you're like, oh, wow, okay. Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam. So a lot of that, which was awesome. So again, for me, culturally enriched, and I loved going in and learning about different cultures and how they operate, and everyone is so different, and especially across Asia, it's all about that relationship building, which again for me is something that.
So that was something I was going to ask you about. What kind of surprised you about working with different cultures?
So there's probably a couple of things that really surprised me when I stepped into that role. One, I went to the Philippines. So again, 2011, 2012, not lots of, senior females in those types of leadership roles. So I went into the Philippines. We were doing something like this. So I had to talk about the program and what we were doing and what we were looking to do. And I was working with the production assistant, and he said to me, Tracey, can you not look at the camera? I'm like, what? It's going to be really weird. He goes, no, I need you to look over there. I'm like, okay. And I said, can you help me understand why? And he goes, it's because you're a little bit intimidating, and we want to make sure that people get to know you a little bit before you look at them directly. And I'm like, oh, okay, radio. So the whole interview, I'm like, very weird. Yeah. So then I went back about 3 months later to do a follow-up, and it was him again. And he goes, you can look at the camera now because they know who you are. I'm like, great, okay, this is a bit easier. Wow. So that was really, that was fascinating for me to understand and work out, oh my God, just from the point of view of a female with a, very big personality walking in, and how you needed to manage that with culturally that type of environment. And then I think the other one for me was probably Japan. Again, senior female in a technology role that they hadn't really seen before. And my leadership team had to do a lot of preparation work with the Japanese leadership team to make sure that they were comfortable and ready for me to come in.
Yeah, wow.
And I still remember my global CIO saying to me, Tracey, I need you to just tone it down. Okay.
It's interesting. I don't know a huge amount about this, and I've never experienced it, but I understand that particularly Korean culture is very hierarchical.
Yeah, as is Japan.
So how did you sort of get used to that? Because we're not very hierarchical in Australia. No.
So again, I'd made sure with my team before I'd land in Japan and Korea that I had the background of, the hierarchy, so I knew who was who. We'd have someone on the ground that would help me navigate that as well, that could speak English, which was really, really helpful. But you needed to be really respectful of that. So that was really important that I understood and sort of worked within that framework to ensure, again, it was all about building relationships.
Yeah.
So that was hugely important to respect those elements in doing that.
Yes, that's fascinating. You, a couple of years on from that, 2014, you left KPMG. Was there tears this time? Was it a bit like leaving?
Yes, there was. It's a common theme.
How did you know it was time to make that move?
Again, I hadn't. In my mind, I had sort of said to myself that I would wait to the end of the program to start to think about what was next. I knew that I needed to change. So again, 80% of my time was on planes. After 4 years, that gets a little bit challenging. Yeah. It was hard to connect with people. So, for me, family and friends are really important. I was really struggling with that because I didn't know where I was going to be. I was missing important events. It didn't feel right. I was also getting quite sick, so I was a bit run down. Yeah. I'd pushed myself a lot with regards to getting the program where it needed to get to. There was a lot of heavy lifting. And the Seek opportunity came out of the blue again. Yeah. And, I was attracted to it because it was a different industry. It was a digital landscape. Yeah. Very agile in the way that they operated, founder-led. product based, all the things that, for me, again, different environment, learning, curiosity, wanted to experience that side of the world. So again, it wasn't an easy decision. It was really, really hard. I remember bringing all of my team leads into a room and crying through the discussion again. But, looking back, it was the right decision. I knew at that point that I didn't want to sort of move down a partner path at KPMG. So it was about work-life balance and finding something that helped me find that a little bit differently and in an environment that was also a bit different. So, again, I was thoughtful about it, but it was hard.
Look, and I think, that seems to be the window I experience with most people is somewhere between maybe 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of commit for life, go down the partner path, and you know what that's going to entail. And for some people, that's what they're motivated by and they're drawn to, and the travel and the excitement and everything else. But otherwise, it's a really good opportunity at that point to probably step away. And because you would have got some incredible experience, and I'm sure Seek weren't the only people interested in what you had to offer.
And consulting firms, even today, they are great learning organisations. You get so many opportunities. I was there for 16 years, but I wasn't in the same place for 16 years. I moved, throughout that organisation. To your earlier question, Anton, and I had really good opportunities to learn in an environment that was really supportive of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So you joined Seek and you initially focused on transformation. You then kind of stayed in your lane with enterprise applications and then eventually to CIO.
Yeah.
At what point did CIO come on the radar there?
So when I joined Seek, it was an organisation size of probably about 400. It changed a lot in the first 5 years. So through acquisition and just through change in business strategy, the way that we wanted to look at it and how we wanted to move forward. We had a restructure in 2019 which created that CIO role that hadn't been there before. So, I was pretty thoughtful again about whether it was another one of those sliding door moments, if you like, with regards to, do I stay, I'm comfortable, or do I, put myself forward and start to think about what's next? So, for me, it was very much, based on what they were asking for in that particular role. I thought I could do it.
Yeah.
I thought I was ready to do it. I had good business knowledge. To your earlier point, Anton, I had a really good brand across the business, and I was looking for that next challenge.
You've been there 5 or 6 years at that point, so you really understand. As I say, you've been on that journey through the growth. And I think people forget that. They think Seek, because they're so familiar with it, it's been around forever. I've actually been in recruitment long enough to remember when job boards first came out. But what's also interesting though in Australia compared to where else I've worked in the world is Seek is so dominant in this market.
Yeah.
I think in every other market in the UK, in the US, there's maybe 3 or 4 major players.
Yeah.
There's a lot of merit to having one dominant place, by the way. It means you're not having to go off to multiple sources. But you took the role of CIO though at the perfect time, December 2019. two months before COVID, you decided to move into another role, a global role. Your timing was awesome. So how did that impact you?
Yeah, it was. I still remember that day. So when I took the role in December 2019, I had a team that was based in Melbourne, but I also had a large team in Kuala Lumpur and Hong Kong. So in my mind, I'd set myself up for the next 6 months that I was going to spend a week every month in Asia. Again, being close to the team, understanding those businesses. Yeah. Which, to your point, Anton, fell apart in March 2020. So it became a really different proposition, and the whole organisation, like a lot of organisations, absolutely shifted in that first 6 months. It was about, how we got our people set up and secure to work remotely. In Australia, that was fairly easy. We'd done that in a fairly easy manner because we're already working in an agile manner, so we had all the tools and everything in place. It was more how we enabled people to be set up at home to do that differently, right? In Asia, it was a different kettle of fish. You know, I had people taking desktop computers home in the taxi because we didn't have laptops.
Yeah, right.
You know, into environments where they were living in shared dorms, so they
Yeah.
didn't have spaces that they could. So that was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You know, also probably our security posture across the Asia marketplace, we had to do a lot of work around just enhancing that to support that work environment. And again, the teams up in Asia, you know, weren't used to that working style, so it took a little bit. But then in some other ways, it probably equalised the team a little bit because everyone was experiencing the work in the same manner with regards to being remote. So everyone felt the same, whereas previously I think people had felt, you know, a little bit that they were missing out because they weren't in head office in Melbourne. That sort of all disappeared once.
Yeah, right. So it kind of took away that, not going to say elitism, that sounds too strong a word for it, but I get it. You get the SaaS-like office feel. Yeah. And I've definitely been in those situations where you're away from the mothership.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because at that point with COVID, the job market went through the floor.
Yeah.
And then bounced to hiring like we've never ever seen ever in history, you know, and I probably will never see on that kind of magnitude again. And there you are at the forefront of the job market. So there must have been a bit of a wobble at the start where everyone's kind of going, well, hang on a minute, is this still viable? To suddenly the volumes coming onto the platform, which is interesting because Seek are reporting there's still more ads on the platform than there was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
But how did, again, as CIO, they're no doubt looking towards you. How did you manage that?
So certainly, yeah, to your point, like the first probably 6 months, it was about no one had experienced it before. So, you know, it was getting people up and working productively, making sure that we were secure, how to reduce the cost base, because you're right, no one was really hiring at that point of time. So, you know, for us, there were decisions that we needed to make around prioritising different work that we were doing, and what things needed to stop. So, and what our workforce needed to look like. You know, we were really clear that we didn't want to make anyone redundant during that point of time. So it was about how we shaped that to make sure that we kept the workforce secure. Yeah. So there was a lot of work around helping people understand what they needed to focus on and what we weren't going to do. Yeah. Then the market picked up, and all of a sudden it was, you know, flash. We had to change again. And I think again the thing that we had to be really, really clear about were what were our priorities, which we pivoted very quickly. Yeah. I think the other challenge on top of that was we had a change of CEO at that point as well. Yeah. So Andrew Bassett stepped out, and Ian Narev stepped up into that role. Yeah. So the whole strategy changed. Which again, from a CIO perspective, you know, I had to start to think about what that transformation needed to look like from a technology perspective to support our business strategy. Yeah. What the team needed to look like going forward as well. We needed to do some work on how we harmonised and made sure that we're all aligned and had the right skills in the right places. And, you know, to add on to that as well, we were building a new office in Melbourne that we had to get people into.
Right. So you spend a bit of cash on that, building this absolutely beautiful...
So, again, then working out, well, what was the right way to get people back in? How was the working style going to adjust based on COVID? So very much, you know, stepping in to help us start to think and shape some of those, you know, different challenges that had really shifted the way that we thought about things. We would have done it very differently if COVID hadn't been there.
Yeah, no doubt. It's also interesting being CIO in such a big tech product company. So how much of your role got involved in the actual product that Seek was, and how much of it was more about kind of BAU infrastructure and the actual fundamentals of running technology?
Yeah, so from the point of view of the way that Seek was set up, so we had a chief technology officer who, to your point, owned a lot of the candidate and hirer experience, so very much that front end. My responsibility was very much, you know, what we called all of the enabling technologies, so whether it was infrastructure, service management, We did a large Salesforce implementation throughout COVID, so we swapped out our ERP system to Workday, so all of those pieces. Yeah. But I think, to your earlier question as well, the thing that we started to do differently, which made some of those particular platforms even more important, instead of saying that we needed to build everything ourselves through our engineering team, we wanted to use some of those SaaS platforms to deliver value quickly. So they became a lot more important in our ecosystem than they probably were 4 or 5 years prior to that. So, I had to start to build that capability in the team to help us understand how we worked more closely with product around how some of those platforms could be integrated as part of our product roadmap.
It's also interesting, and I'm interested if this presented you a challenge, but you're providing a tech function or tech service to tech people who probably think they know. Yeah. I'm not going to say how to do it better, but they've probably got a fairly good idea of what they would do. Yeah. How do you navigate that?
I had an amazing help desk team because you're right, everyone knew better. So, they'd come up with lots of really, really cool requests. I think for us it was making sure that we had a really, really robust technology strategy aligned to the business strategy, and how we kept that alive and made sure that everything that we did was aligned to that, which then lined up to the business strategy. Because I think, to your point, Anton, it's really easy to get lost when you've got technology people that have really awesome ideas. We needed to stay really true to that strategy so that we were really focused on what we needed to deliver. But some of the stuff people came up with, so we did hackathons every 6 months. Which was really, culturally embedded and a fantastic opportunity for people to spend 3 days, thinking about innovation and how we can uplift and do things better across our organisation, whether it was product or whether it was about the ecosystem. And, we made sure that those particular initiatives that were deemed, really valuable, that we productionised. So that we gave people the opportunity to do that through that process as well.
You just kind of lean into it and embrace it.
I think you have to, because otherwise people will find ways around it. So this way people had an opportunity to really celebrate and show some of the ideas they came up with were amazing and continue to be amazing.
Yeah, great. I saw in a couple of years ago, 2021, you started doing some advisory roles.
Yes.
And I think I saw on there a really quite eclectic list, I'm going to call it. I saw Emmbr on there, which is part of the Gartner Group, Deakin University, the Australian Animal Protection Society as well. So no doubt that's kind of leaning into some personal passions there. Yeah. I'm just interested, how did you get involved in those roles?
Again, people reached out. So for the Emmbr role, one of the program directors reached out to me and said, would you be interested in being part of the governing body? Yeah. For me, thinking about next steps in my career, that those advisory board type of roles, I believe I've got an ability to give back. So I was interested in starting to experience some of that. So, that one, it's not a hugely heavy touch, but again, it gives you access to a large CIO, CISO environment, which is great. It helps us make sure that we're focusing on the right things with regards to what the CIOs and CISOs are looking for. So I really enjoyed that. Deakin University Advisory Board for the tech space, again, they reached out to me, based on my experience, asking if I'd be interested to join. I'm really keen to give back. So, for me, it's really important that you're able to provide help to especially unis around technology. I think for us, from the point of view of STEM and what that needs to grow to and look like in the next 20 or 30 years, we need to encourage people to actually step into that space. So I think that connection between industry and universities needs to be strong, and they're really looking for it. So for me, that was another sort of passion point with regards to,
that makes sense.
I think it's really important that we build that connection. So that's sort of how I landed there. And then I was, a member of the Australian Animal Protection Society, and they put a note out that they were looking to upgrade their board. And I thought, again, that would be a great opportunity. I have, 3 cats. Yep. So I didn't want to get any more cats. But from the point of view of I had previously got some pets through the RSPCA, and I know they do amazing work, as do these guys. So, it was a great opportunity to sort of step into that space and give me the opportunity to see what not-for-profit boards look like and what they do. It is such a different space with regards to how they operate, how they need to operate to generate funding and deliver. The people in those organisations are so passionate and so amazing at what they do.
It's certainly not about earnings per share.
No,
for
it's
example,
not.
Right? As in, it's a very different motivator.
And people aren't there based on the salary either, right? They're there because they are really passionate about what they do, and that's been amazing for me to see as to how willing people are to give back and to, be there to help them understand from a strategy perspective where they need to get to without a lot of resources that you would have in other organisations has been really interesting.
I've read somewhere once the aspiration of every business leader should be to harness or build a team that's as passionate as a group of volunteers.
Absolutely.
If you achieve that in business, you're flying. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you moved on from Seek. And you've recently joined Virtus Health.
Yep.
So what drew you to that role?
So again, stepping out of Seek, I knew for me from the next step the things that I wanted. So what I was clear about was I wanted to work with an organisation that had purpose that I could really align to. So Virtus Health is in IVF. So, it's a great environment with regards to helping people have families. So I think that's really, really lovely. I wanted a role that was going to be something that enabled me to help transform, grow, build the technology footprint across an organisation. And certainly I've got that opportunity there. So I've only been there 6 weeks, but there's lots of great opportunities there with regards to how we make sure that technology plays the right role to enable the business to grow and scale, which is really, really exciting. And I also wanted a role that I was able to have a direct reporting line through to the CEO and help influence and build the business strategy, which, again, this particular role's got. So it sort of ticked all the boxes for me.
Yeah, that's great. I'm also interested, as you say there, you're 6 weeks in.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that people are always interested to learn about is how someone sets themselves up for success in a new role. Mm-hmm. So what have the first six weeks looked like for you? Not specifically, but how have you set yourself up for success? Probably?
Yeah, I think the old adage of, what's your 30, 60, 90-day plan? I know that's, quite, some people might think old-fashioned thinking, but I think you need to be really thoughtful around what other things you're going to focus on. For me, I think one of the biggest things was, and I've said this to my team as well, listening, asking questions, not judging. So getting out, talking to stakeholders, going out to the clinics, seeing what goes on there, working with my team to understand skills and capabilities, some of the challenges they're facing. So, certainly the first 6 weeks have been about talking to people, listening, starting to build my sort of mental model of what it is we're trying to do and where we need to get to. And then it'll be starting to put together the roadmap and priorities, working with the CEO and also my executive team around what are the priorities for the business, what are the things we need to lean into, how we think about having the right skills and capabilities to actually deliver what we need to deliver, how I make sure that we're aligned and clearly communicating how that needs to look and feel. So I think you need to chunk it down, Anton, otherwise it can become quite foreboding, right? Yeah. So I think it's just being really, really clear on what are those, those things that you're going to do to move it forward and not get too consumed by it all. So I'm trying to be really focused and clear on the things I need to actually do to move forward day by day at the moment. But listening is the biggest one for me, and asking questions.
Yeah, definitely. Look, and I think it gives you that litmus test if you write it down.
Yeah.
To make sure you're kind of staying on point.
Yeah.
So I think with any role, you can kind of go off at 10 degrees in the wrong
Absolutely,
direction, and suddenly you end up over here, and you've missed. I think the first probably 90 days in a role, you never get that time back.
No.
So it's your time to really absorb. No one's really expecting you to have an impact in the first 90 days, realistically, particularly at that level. So enjoy that time, embrace it, because after 90 days, someone's watching and counting the dollars. In between Seek and Virtus, you had a sort of break of about 8 months, 7 or 8 months there. How did you feel your time?
So stepping out of Seek, I was very, again, deliberate that I wanted to take a break. So in my mind, a break was until the end of the year. So I travelled, which was great. So I had an opportunity to travel overseas, meet up with some people that I hadn't seen for a while, which was really, really lovely. So I travelled, which was great. Yeah. I also went and did my company directorship foundations course. So I took the opportunity to go and do that. Did that up in Brisbane. So again, wanted to do it sort of outside of my familiar environment, which was really good. And then I also did some online learning. So, me being me, through MIT. So I did some an online course around artificial intelligence and business strategy, which was really, really good. So I did that for about 6 weeks. And then by January, again, in my mind, it was about, okay, now we need to think about, how are we going to go out and start to talk to people? So, I sort of really actively started looking in January. I know some people think, that's still a holiday. No, not really. You're pretty much working 5 or 6 hours a day, just trying to, 100%. Navigate, prepare, do all of those things. So, for me, having that break before Christmas was really, really, really invigorating, and just I really enjoyed it. It hasn't been something I've done for a long time.
Yeah, it's great. And I think it's interesting there that you did the AI focus. I think increasingly the expectation of CIOs and tech leaders is to have an opinion or a position on AI, and I think increasingly CEOs and boards are looking to the CIO to be able to offer that. Yeah. It's certainly something that we're kind of hearing and seeing more. That's great. I'm going to move on to what I'm going to call the lightning round. Okay. So these questions are a bit more punchy.
Ooh, okay, great.
So we'll see where we go with this one. But do you have any career regrets?
Oh, geez, career regrets. Yeah, early on in my career, when I was at Westpac, I said no to a role, just because I was really fearful of. I said that I'm really good with regards to changing and ambiguity, but at that point, I just felt really uncomfortable and not confident to take it, and I said no to it. And that's probably one point that I regret. I think the other point was when I was travelling for 6 months in Europe. I was doing some temp work at HSBC in London, and they asked me to stay, and I said no. I need to go home.
There you go. That's a sliding doors moment.
Well, it's funny, right? So I said no to that role at that particular time. Came home, and then probably 12 months later, my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. So in hindsight, it was right for me to come home, but other circumstances might have changed that, but it was important that I was here.
Yeah, okay. What are you most proud of in your career?
I think the thing I'm most proud of is probably my last role at KPMG, the APAC program director that we talked about. And I think I'm most proud of that just because there were so many challenges that I needed to overcome as a leader in that role. And, I think that's probably the first time that I also started to acknowledge being a female leader in technology comes with some other challenges around it. There was a lot of influencing I had to do, not only with the stakeholders across the countries that I was working with, but with our global IT organisation to make sure our methodology and approach was right. Yeah. I had to build out my own team, which was a cross-cultural team at that point, and I had to deliver against some pretty aggressive timelines, and I did that with an awesome team. I did that with a lot of support. We had a lot of fun. It was hard work. But I think for me, when I left KPMG in that role, it was probably one of the things that is, for me, a really, really big highlight.
Yeah, fantastic. You earlier mentioned mentors have played a really important role for you.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding a mentor?
For me, it's generally been when you're able to build a relationship with someone that feels pretty good. So it's not something that I've actively gone out and said, okay, I want you to be my mentor. I want to go and find someone. It's generally been people that I've worked with in the business that I've been drawn to from the point of view that I can learn from. I've never done it formally, Anton. It's always been informal, but it's always been those people that challenge me. So to your earlier point, I'm highly independent and I can be very stubborn at times. So, for me, I need people to call that and, help me think differently. So those people have tended to be the people that I have been attracted to with regards to that mentoring role, and called it out and, helped me really realise and recognise what good looks like. Again, because I'm quite direct and open in the way that I operate, it'll be people that are like that. So, give me honest feedback.
Candor.
Yeah, tends to be those type of people that I'll look towards, and a lot of them are still in my life, which is great as well.
Yeah, great. I guess through that mentoring, we receive feedback, as you've touched on there, and we're shaped by it.
Yeah.
What's the most significant feedback that you've received in your career?
I think for me, I think to my earlier point is, feedback that I don't need to be the smartest person in the room and I don't need to know everything. Yeah. It's more about how you empower and build a team that feels safe and able to contribute the role that they need to play so that you become a team.
Yeah.
So I think for me that was probably, early on when I stepped into, being into management roles. Initially I found it really hard because I was trying to do everything and know everything, and you just can't. So I think for me that was probably one of the turning points, is how you learn to use the different skills around you and ask for help, because no one knows everything.
Yeah, great. What singular piece of sage advice would you give to the next generation?
So, the thing that I generally say to this question, we've talked about sliding door moments. And, the conversation that I have a lot with a lot of people that I mentor today is they have this real fear that if they don't think they know everything or they're going to have every answer, they're going to say no. And I would probably say, and I do say to people, back yourself, say yes. There's nothing wrong to you learning on the job and starting to ask for help and develop that as you go. Yeah. Just because you don't tick every box, and you see this, right, with regards to recruitment, you don't have to tick every box. Yeah. Say yes. If it feels right, say yes. Yeah. And then work out how you're going to do it.
Work it out next. You've run some pretty big teams through KPMG, through Seek, and the things that you've done. When you're hiring people, what would you look for?
I more probably look for aptitude rather than just deep technical skills. So for me, the deep technical skills are important, but a lot of the technology roles today are about not just about how you code, but how you engage with people, how you solve problems, how you communicate. So for me, it's balancing that and looking for some of those skills, the softer skills as well, with regards to, tell me how you show up, tell me how you think through a problem, tell me how, when you hit a roadblock, you're thinking around how you navigate through that. So, it's all of the things, but it's certainly making sure it's not just the technical, it's some of those softer skills as well.
Yeah, okay. Is there an interview question that you ask every time?
I think for me it's more generally is specific to what I'm looking for. I think the awareness question around, if you're asked about the things that you could do better or where you need to develop, what does that look like? I think that tells a lot about a person with regards to their ability to have a level of awareness. And it's not just about, I suppose, calling it out. It's about how you're addressing that and how you're leaning on people or seeking feedback to actually address it. So that one for me, I think, is quite important. So I will take my first answer back and say that one's important with regards to, I think it shows a lot about that person and their level of awareness and ability to grow.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Easier question now.
Yeah.
Right. We're through the toughies. You've got a curious mind. You love learning.
Yeah.
You love developing.
Yeah.
What are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading Presence by Amy Cuddy at the moment.
Okay. I've come across that.
So, for me, because I have such an active mind, and you ask any of my teams, and how everyone does different types of leadership surveys, I'm the person that chases the shiny red thing. So I tend to move quite quickly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've had to do a lot of work to focus on is how I be present.
Yeah.
So, even today when we're talking, there's no equipment around me because generally I'm, all over the place. So, Amy Cuddy, people will know her, American lady, but, this book is all about how you show up and how you be present and some of the techniques to do that and what that looks like and how that plays out. So, for me, it's an interesting read and some things that I can take away and continue to work on in that space.
What's been your key takeaway so far?
The thing around not having any devices.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's we do surround ourselves with clutter that it's easy to fiddle with. I keep clicking my pen, that's why I throw it over there. So.
I think that and the communication piece, being really clear and playing back that you're really listening, I think, are the things that I've taken away.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
It's been really, really interesting to learn your story. And I think especially if someone's was to come across your profile on LinkedIn, they wouldn't know that stuff about Westpac at the beginning.
No.
And kind of how you got to where you got to today. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this podcast. And as you say, you talked about Deacon and inspiring STEM talent.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's showing people that there isn't necessarily a kind of cookie cutter approach to being in tech. People come from all walks of life, all backgrounds, different things.
Yeah.
And it's a world of opportunities.
Yeah.
So you definitely epitomise that. So really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Anton.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to Tales from Tech Titans, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to get more insights about tech careers, then check out the Emmbr, that's EMMBR LinkedIn page for the latest updates, articles, and engaging discussions.